A bounce back night in Washington as Auston Matthews powers a big offensive night for the Leafs. We'll discuss the win and TJ Brodie getting the night off. How many more nights can we expect him to be off? We'll discuss that on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, your daily things for all things Leafs. I'm your host, David Morassutti. I reminder that the Locked On Leafs podcast is a daily Maple Leafs centric podcast. Make sure you subscribe free wherever you get your podcast from, and make sure you're subscribed on YouTube as we continue our push for 5,000 subscribers. Also, today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. And if you're one of those people who were in Washington tonight and use the Game Time app, you saw a nice offensive bounce back from this Leafs team. Pretty much a reverse of what we saw against the Philadelphia Flyers. Because against the Flyers, the Leafs could not keep the puck out of the net within the first minute of the game. In this one, Auston Matthews decides, all right, we gotta do things a little differently tonight. 16 seconds in, he scores a goal. Joining me on today's show, by the way, is my good buddy Austin Owens. He is filling in for Mike. It's our carousel of guest hosts for the week. So, Austin, thank you for joining me. And look, it's always better when it's on a Leafs victory night.
Yeah, we'll take it, right? You scrape the bottom of the barrel a bit, but I appreciate you having me on. You said it, Auston Matthews opening the scoring real early, kind of a bit of a role reversal from last night against Philadelphia, and just, kept the momentum going from there, a bit of ups and downs, but you take a 7-3 victory when you can get it, right?
Oh, of course, right. And a game like this, you know what? Yeah, were there some things that didn't go the Leafs' way, and we'll kind of touch on a few things that the Leafs could definitely clean up on. But it's a second night of a back-to-back. The Washington Capitals, their record and look at some of the stats may not show, but this is a team that's still fighting to get into the playoffs. Which, I mean, kudos to them. They've stuck it through it, even though they've really haven't played great from start to finish this year. It also kind of shows kind of how subpar the competition has been. When you look at third in the Metro and that second wildcard spot, there's going to be a little bit of a discrepancy when you see the seedings going into the playoffs. But I mean, the one thing we've saw and going into this game, as we mentioned, Auston Matthews getting everything started, and this was a game that was being pegged as the Matthews versus Ovechkin showdown, right? Auston Matthews in his pursuit of still trying to go for 70. I believe he's on pace for 69. I believe that's nice. Where we are at. Very nice. And Alex Ovechkin continuing his push for the goal mark set by Wayne Gretzky. And tonight, a pair of goals for the grade 8, and he is now 49 goals away. I didn't even realize he was within 50 until he scored the goal. I was like, yep, 50 away. And then not too long after that became 49. And so, maybe I want to touch on this one first. Like, I don't have any doubt right now that this guy is going to get that mark unless he suffers. I mean, knock on wood that he stays healthy. And that's the only thing right now that would give me any reservation, because he started the year cold. I think it was like 8 goals in his first half of the season almost. And then he's got 15 in his last 22. I think is what I heard on the broadcast.
It became like a full-blown storyline, like the kind of fall off of Ovechkin. Once you get to that certain age, there's kind of like, okay, is this, the downslope that you're going to kind of see him hit that regression? But I mean, to your point, Ovechkin's a machine. 19 years in the league. I don't know how many injuries he's had, if any. He's probably battled through a lot, but he's a guy that you very rarely see spend time away from the ice. So if I had to bet on one guy breaking Gretzky's record and having that longevity, I think it'd be 8 in Washington.
Yeah, and look, he's now up to 20. I believe it's now 23 goals on the year. He's not going to be getting to that 40, 50 goal mark. I mean, look, I wouldn't put it past him. The guy had 42 last year. Clearly, this is also a Washington team that's going in a different trajectory, right? There's no Nick Backstrom to set him up like he used to. He's still getting those power play opportunities. That's, I think, obviously where he gets a lot of his, that's where he makes his money, right?
Yeah.
But it speaks to the longevity. You mentioned it, right? Throughout his career, like I'm looking here, I think the fewest games he might have played was 68 back in the 2019-20 season. He had 48 goals in that year.
It's still hard to believe that he only played that many. Like, he's just a machine, right? Like, throughout his career, it's not only a goal scoring, one of the best of all time, maybe the greatest of all time in a couple of years in the next little bit, but he runs people over. It's like kind of like Auston Matthews in a sense, but like to a different degree, where it's like when Ovi wants to play that physical game, he can destroy somebody. He'll run somebody over for fun, and it's scary. So it's not super surprising that he just, he's just a machine that can just run through anything and, have that longevity.
Yeah, I mean, and you just brought up Auston Matthews' name. If there's ever going to be a player that's going to give any chance of any player, I think that could beat that mark other than Ovechkin, it's Auston Matthews. And look, I could only imagine where Auston Matthews' career would be if he was healthier, right? He's been now the last couple of seasons hasn't been too bad. You think about years where he was scoring at a ridiculous rate per goals rate. And when everyone talks about why is Auston Matthews getting heralded so much, like the rate that he is scoring surpasses Ovechkin. He's had more goals they do the side by side comparison. Matthews has more goals than Ovechkin, and he's played pretty much fewer games. And where I really think Auston Matthews has really laid that claim over Ovechkin is that 5-on-5 production, right?
Yeah.
That's where he has set himself apart, and that's where I think his sustainability as a goal scorer. I mean, and he's still producing on the power play. He's actually, I think right now he's at 15 power play goals on the season, right? And we still got a few games left here to go. Like, he's probably going to establish a new career high in power play goals scored, and he's still scoring more even strength goals than a lot of guys have even total goals this year. So this game really does show. And look, Ovechkin was doing it from his office, and Matthews. Look at the goals he scored in this game. Weren't exactly the Auston Matthews type goals either. That's the first one was, I would say the second one. I haven't seen Auston Matthews score from there in a long time.
No, you kind of go back to, I forget which game it was, back earlier in the season. And he was just on the sideboards, just threw a puck on and it went through the 5-hole. Like you don't see him score many ugly ones. And they don't ask how, right? They just, even the third goal that was waved off, that's a great play. Feeds it out to the point for a one-timer, follows, the pass right into the slot, gets the rebound and scores. Like, just kind of the scorer's IQ that Matthews has is crazy to see. And same, goes for Ovechkin. the same thing. You kind of know where his bread is buttered when it comes to, operating on the power play. It's kind of funny. And you're 19 now. That first goal when he scored when John Carlson fed him, it's like, he's got 30 feet, 40 feet of space on a one-timer. It's like, where he's putting that puck. Like, maybe put a guy there. It is what it is, but it's like nobody can stop it. And near 19, it just speaks to how dominant and what a rocket of a shot he has.
Yeah, I mean, he scored a similar goal against Calgary the other night, and like we always, every time he scores like that, everyone's just like, just put a guy there. Like, why don't teams do that? And it's just he also took an angle on the first goal that he was a little deeper there, and I think he did that for a reason. He put himself in a better position. The second goal that he scored,
that was a goal.
I look, Dylan Strome must really want to be the guy that helps Ovechkin get to this mark. I'm gonna see if I'm gonna screen cap it here because
blink twice if you're in danger, man. Oh my god,
I have never in my life seen an NHL player. So for those of you that are watching on YouTube, I've never once seen an NHL player who has a clear-cut chance to score. And look, I mean, maybe he felt like Joseph Woll had the angle on him. I don't think that would be the case, considering how close he was to shooting. But the fact that he's like, I'm going to pass it to Ovechkin. Well, look, he's passing it to the best goal scorer in recent memory. I get that. But your team is also trailing. If you miss that, I wonder how Spencer Carberry would have felt. Like, I understand being a good teammate. Do what's best for the team, though, in this situation.
If there's one play that you could, put the Benny Hill theme to, it'd be this one. Just if you rewind the whole way back, Benoit carries it up the sideboards, 2 Leafs change, another jumps on, loses it in somebody's feet. I forget who. I think it was David Kampf. 2 guys are hanging off the sideboards because they're trying not to get a delay a game. And there's and then there's actually the one I thought was going to get called here. There's like a sneaky good interference play there by Tom Wilson that leads to the 2-on-1. But
yeah,
Jake McCabe plays that as well as you could. Maybe you want to be a little higher on Ovechkin, but he also kind of circles out and gives Strome more of a chance. But yeah, I think they said it on the broadcast. Like, it's the last person that thought Strome was going to pass that was Joe Woll, because 2-on-1, you're taught to play the shooter there. The shooter has a full range of where he wants to put it anywhere in the net, and he feeds it to Ovechkin, who's standing in the left corner.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things. Like, there was still, like, going into this game, look, I think there was a game like this with changes made on the blue line, and we're going to get into that a little bit more a little later into the show. But when you look at this game, the Leafs definitely needed to hunker down, have a better effort. We definitely saw that. I would say the big issue they still have, and that still remains lingering, is that penalty kill. Look, I get it, Ovechkin. He's going to score a lot of times on those. But it's one of those things where a game like this should have blown out the Capitals, in my opinion. I think 5-on-5, the Leafs were the way better team. Penalties, undisciplined penalties sometimes, and also just the way the penalty kill has been, that still remains a concern. But I think if you're going to take any note of what was different between last night and the prior game against Philly and against the Capitals, I would say 2 things. One, I think the chemistry felt a little better. And the effort was there right from the start to finish.
Yeah, I think, in terms of, you don't really feel like that was a 7-3 game for most of it. The shots were kind of low for Washington. It didn't, they got away at the end and got a couple of those goals, but it felt a lot tighter. I think it was 4-3 at one point when Ovechkin scored that goal. And yeah, I think that's the main thing you're looking for, right? Is second half of a back-to-back, the legs aren't going to quite be there. It's on the road with travel. You want a solid effort. And I think obviously the extra, energy that Matthews brings with that early goal can't be discounted. And then when you look at it, just, Domi was going all night. I think Bertuzzi he kind of had a bit of a roller coaster night. But the fourth line really impressed me. I think they were very good. They had a couple of shifts where they hemmed them in the zone. Just, David Kampf and Dewar, and I believe, was it McMahon that was with them most of the game?
Well, I think he had Kampf,
Dewar,
and Gregor.
Yes, Gregor. They were just doing a really good job cycling and, controlling possession and making sure that, they really wore the Capitals down, which I think is huge, because the Caps did that a couple times the other way. And you kind of see how the momentum swings when, that the bottom 3 guys in your lineup are creating really good offense and making it tough on the other team.
Exactly. Well, let's get into a little bit more of the individual performance from this game, guys, that really kind of stood out in the 3 stars of the game. So we'll do that here next on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast is brought to you by Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. If you're looking even for a game on Saturday night, Hockey Night in Canada, one of the toughest games to find on Ticketmaster for a reasonable price, go and check out Game Time. You probably will find the best views, lowest price guaranteed. And also, if you're ever looking for a deal in a certain section, they have their zone deals that you can look at there as well. And of course, all-in prices show your total upfront, so you're getting a great deal before you check out. Buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, and even after an hour after it starts, it's the place to find last-minute deals. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guarantee. Welcome back to the Locked On Leafs podcast. David Morassutti here, and with Mike not here today, I'm joined with my good buddy Austin Owens. And as we do after every Leafs victory, it is time for the good. The 3 stars. I was about to say good, bad, and the ugly. Thankfully,
We
there
can
was
do the good,
nothing.
bad, and the ugly. I think we did the ugly already, though.
I think we already took care of the ugly, but there was a lot of good we could take from this game. So let's give some shout outs to 3 guys that we thought really had standout performances. So with you being the guest, Austin, who would you give your 3rd star to?
I mean, 3rd star, I think you could go with 2 guys. So I'll kind of, we'll vibe a little bit.
We shoot here all the time on the podcast. If you want to do a duo or bring a pair
the
together.
3A and 3B we can go with. I mean, I feel like, 3rd star, you got to go, William Nylander or John Tavares, both 1 goal and 2 assists. I think Willie had that big goal to open the second period. We talk about Matthews' goal that opened it up. Willie scored, first minute of the second. That was a really big swing goal coming out of the intermission. So, and then, JT getting that power play goal, I think that was a big, momentum shift for the Leafs. It just not a lot was going right on the power play tonight. Entries were tough, that kind of thing. So I think his goal, quick little backhand. Sorry to cut you off there, but quick little backhand. I think that was just a slick little goal and, something the Leafs really needed.
I mean, I should not have been cutting you off because that is your time to talk. The important thing here, and I'll give a quick shout out to JT. He's been converting on some, great chances in front.
Oh, yeah.
He has 11 goals in his last 20 games. He's really been finding that last 3 games played, 3 goals, 5 assists, 8 points. He is producing. I understand people are still going to complain about his contract and his role in the team, but he is still producing. That's all I think we need to see and we care about. He is also doing it at final. Yeah, but my 3rd star was William Nylander. That goal he scored, Ovechkin scores on the power play, and you needed a response, right? What better way? This team, as we have said, the best way to kill momentum for the other team is for your team, for this Leafs team to do it on offense. Get down there, make this team play on their heels, and they did that on that goal. What a shot. He knew. I thought maybe it hit the post. I thought maybe it blocked. It did not look like a shot that went in, but absolutely rifled that puck.
Yeah, there's very few players that, you give that time and space to, they're going to make you pay in the NHL, but there are very few guys that, make it look as good as Willie. He had a similar goal in Philly last night, but it was, opposite side of the net. But I think this kind of slept on thing with a lot of these shooters was, Charlie Lindgren's a right-handed goalie that, presents some problems for guys, but Willie, really picked blocker side high and just, stuck with it. And
he's a right shot, a little bit more of an advantage for him on a play like that. So, and I think the broadcast mentioned that too. You kind of pick a bit of a weakness in the goalie there. Not often you get a right hand catching goaltender. So, pretty decent night there for Willie. 90 points on the year for Will Nye, the points guy, right? Mike asked me a little while back if 100 was in reach, and I thought maybe he would come up short. I'm gonna have to be changing my answer to now. Probably likely you're gonna see William Nylander get to 100 on the year, which I mean, I don't. With Nylander, I mean, with the Marner injury, and I know Marner, I didn't expect him to get into the 100 range because he did have a bit of a slow start. Right now, Willie is on pace for 108 points.
Huge.
So
Fantastic.
he's producing. He's on a goal streak right now, 4 straight games with the goal. I think we are. I know people were concerned about Nylander after he signed his contract.
Yeah.
Offensively, he's still doing it. Defensively, still has some work to do in that.
Ups and downs.
All right. Your 2nd star.
My 2nd star, he's had, speaking of up and down years, Max Domi. He's been, outstanding this last little bit. I think, he's kind of bounced around the lineup, playing wing, playing center, kind of, a bit of a Swiss Army knife when it comes to Sheldon Keefe, throwing him in the blender. They just kind of throw him in a spot and see if it works. Put him beside Matthews tonight, 4 assists. I think that might have been his best game as a Leaf. I don't think that's stretch, I'm probably not the hot take of the year there, but just from a possession standpoint, I think he and Matthews really riffed well off of each other. They had a lot of drop passes, a lot of just kind of that built-in chemistry you see from Matthews and Marner, where they kind of know where each other are going to be. I think it was really impressive to see, and he had some, great setups, couple really impressive assists, and I think honestly you should give him a shot on that first power play unit just to see what he's got. I think he would work out really well.
I think two things here about Max Domi. I think and he was my second start too. I think you were bang on when you come to like him having one of his best games as a Leaf. Obviously season high 4 assists, season high 4 points. And I think really the only other game you can maybe say he had a better night was when he got 2 goals against Vegas in Vegas.
Yeah.
But this game here, what it shows me is there's more to Max Domi in terms of what he can do for this team if you put him in the right positions to succeed, right? He played center, give him with some guys that could do some offensive things. That's what he's good at. We know he has defensive deficiencies. We know he's not the stout defensive player. That's not why they signed him. They signed him to add to that offense. And with Marner out, and I think people like you saw it in Philadelphia where Auston Matthews, Tyler Bertuzzi, and Paul did his homework. That was not working. The Leafs needed someone that could get Matthews the puck and also a player that is willing to also carry the puck more. And that's Max Domi for you, right? He's kind of, I'm not going to say he's not Mitch Marner replacement, but he can take some of those things that Marner does and help bring it to that line. So I do like that if Marner, we don't know how long he's going to be out for, but you have Max Domi right now that can fulfill that need. Bertuzzi's still kind of working on that line. I know that people were wondering if Sheldon Keefe was benching him. He wasn't. Apparently he was sick and just wasn't ready to start that game. There's been a flu bug. I don't know. It was a little interesting. I mean, they're also very shorthanded with Reeves out, so they couldn't just, unless they went 11-7. That was really the only other option the Leafs had was to give Bertuzzi time to be ready. But I think Domi's shown again that there's another dimension to his game. So a game like this, he's earned more opportunity now to continue playing with Matthews until Marner's back. And the question I have now is, when Marner comes back, do you consider keeping Domi on the wing on that line? Or do you find that maybe you just need to keep Bertuzzi there and see if that trio works?
It's an interesting question because then it's, the domino effect, the rest of the lineup, right? And Domi was taking up that center role in some cases. Does that mean Kampf comes up? You have Dewar now who can also play that fourth center. I think Kampf actually, he's not, he is what he is offensively, but, cycling the puck and just do like he playing with Reeves and Holmberg, that line was doing really well for a good stretch of the last little bit before Reeves got injured of just same thing, hemming teams in, just constant pressure, maybe not the most, offensively scary, but, just wearing teams down. That's huge, especially in the playoffs. I think, having a guy like Domi up there, he's not quite going to be, a Zach Hyman thing where he's going to stand in front of the net and get beat up and do all that. But he's a guy that, he's not fun to play against in the playoffs, especially when those rules become a little less strict. And, I think with Marner, you have 2 playmakers that can feed Matthews, and you have a guy that's not afraid to mix it up. I'd run with it for the playoffs. If this keeps going for an extended stretch, why not give it a go?
Yeah, I think Bertuzzi's really shown that there's I think him and Keefe have been on Keefe sees the potential and he's trying to get it out of Bertuzzi. So keep that going for a little bit and see if you can get the chemistry going. All right, first star. I think it's pretty evident. The guy who was robbed of a hat trick.
Simon Benoit.
Hey.
Auston Matthews.
Great game.
Benoit he played well.
Has played well. He has shown that maybe he should not have been taken out of the lineup.
That was an unfair ricochet at Simon Benoit. It was just the first guy that came to my mind.
Exactly. But, I mean, Auston Matthews, should have had a hat trick tonight. Bertuzzi, I think you owe Austin. If Auston Matthews does not if he falls, like let's say he gets to 69 goals and Bertuzzi's offside is the reason why he doesn't get there. Oh boy. It's not gonna feel so good.
Yeah, that's Oh boy, I don't know how that plays in the room, but you probably just bury it deep down and never talk about it again, or maybe you get him to buy your Rolex or something. I don't know what happens. Depends.
Exactly. I think also we talk about the goals that Matthew scored. Let's also give a shout out to that pass on the Bertuzzi goal. That was just unbelievable. No, Domi gives it to Matthews. You think he's going to shoot.
Yeah.
I don't know which defenseman it was that Matthews made fall on his rear as he did the behind the back pass to Bertuzzi. That's what made that play even sweeter, was getting that defenseman to look absolutely ridiculous. And a little shout out to Matthews. He's the first Leaf with multiple 5-point games in a season since Rick Vye back in 81-82.
It's pretty good. Heard of him?
I think I think it is. And there's also this constant thing. Kevin Papetti, going to give him a shout out for. I'm going to call this tweet of the night. It's awesome to see two of the game's best goal scorers go back and forth. Matthews has 2 tonight, and McMahon has another one.
Bobby McMahon is just something special. Just
he is. But I think when we look at Matthews, though, this is a game here where he realized the team, after what happened against Philly, he needs to step it up. And it's evident when he does it that early in the game. 16 seconds in. This is what a good and look, I know people are going to get in their licks and say Matthews needs to do this more often. But this is when a good player just decides, all right, we're winning this game. And that's what he did.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of fans have kind of been looking for from him, is more so when it comes to, the postseason, of just the best players in the world. You look at like a Nate McKinnon, something like that. You don't have to question when a guy's locked in like that. He's going from the first shift to the very end. And I think that's what Matthews was doing tonight. As I'm not going to compare him to Nate McKinnon because that's a whole other bag of worms and, whole other argument. But the best players turn it on when their team needs them. And I think this was a situation where, road game, second half of back-to-back, you needed your best players to be outstanding tonight, and he was. He
definitely was. We're going to quickly now move on to a tough, kind of a decision that came out of nowhere, but I think was starting to percolate a little bit. And that's with TJ Brodie getting a healthy scratch. We'll kind of discuss the motivation behind that and how his replacement did in the lineup tonight, and if this might be something we see a little more common between now and the end of the season. We'll do that here next on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guarantee Fit, if your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need, the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit only available to U.S. customers. Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast. David Morassutti here with Austin Owens. Mike Stefano likely not going to be back until next week as he gets some R&R. I mean, the Leafs are going to need some R&R as they got a back-to-back coming up with the Oilers and Hurricanes on the schedule. And it's a curious time because back-to-backs, usually you try to see teams get guys some rest on back-to-backs. Keefe has generally made changes, either throwing in someone differently on the fourth line. It's usually the only change he made. But tonight, he made a pretty significant change, not even injury-related, and that was TJ Brodie being a healthy scratch. As Keefe tried to massage the wording in saying, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit here, but essentially saying, we wanted to get him a night off because he's been playing a lot. We've been asking a lot of TJ Brodie, but also saying he knows his game hasn't been at where he's expected to be at where the Leafs expect them to be at. So first question I have here for you, Austin, is was this healthy scratch a surprise to you?
I think, yes and no. It's kind of a nothing answer, unfortunately. But I think if you watched him, he and Morgan Riley play last night, it wasn't, the cleanest of games. It was
A typical Morgan Riley, TJ Brodie outing.
Yeah, it's kind of you keep kind of trying to make it work, and it just doesn't work. And it's not quite the definition of insanity yet, but it's getting to that point where it's like, yeah, we can't try this anymore. The one that stuck out from the Philly game was like the 3-man screen on Samsonov. You didn't see a point shot from Morgan Frost. It's just can't happen. That's on Riley more so. He just had like a little drive-by on him. But yeah, I think, I think it's a two-parter. Like Keith said, it's, TJ Brodie's into his 30s now. You might as well, Washington, Philly's definitely on an easy back-to-back. And then you're also looking at another back-to-back in a couple of days where, a 4-5 is not the easiest thing in the world by any means. But yeah, the play it hasn't been there. You have to call a spade. And I think it's more of, Keefe has to, wear a bit of it as well. It's the deployment of him, I think, of, he's played on the one side. It hasn't worked out. They tried him on a different side of the ice. Seemed to work really well for a couple of games. And then once Morgan Riley came back, he just slid right back into that spot. So, it's a thing where little A, little B, right? Like sit him down, give him a breath. He'll be in one or both of these next couple of games. And, you get him a little bit of rest going into, a little bit of a stretch where you kind of know where you are again this year when it comes to the playoffs. So, guys like Marner, things like that, they are out. They're not playing in the lineup, but you're also kind of looking ahead of the bigger picture with that thing. And I think that's kind of important as well.
Exactly, right? Here's the thing, like TJ Brodie, a lot of people are wondering if this is it for him at the some people want to escape if he's even going to play again this year. I don't think that's the case. I think Sheldon Keefe still has a lot of trust in TJ Brodie. He's still someone that that should be playing at a higher level than he has been. And I think, maybe a little too much asked of him. I think the important one here is him and Riley should not be playing together. Again, this is why they brought in Lyubushkin. Obviously, the illness had changed that. They tried Jake McCabe there. Didn't exactly go great either. Like there was the one goal that was this Strome? The third goal that went off of Joseph Woll's
it was McMichael, the bank shot.
Sorry, McMichael, thank you. To me, that right there is a goal that is who exactly is to blame on it? First off, can the Leafs have a little better on denying entry into the zone? They make it way too easy where guys are coming at them full speed. They're backing up. To me, it's not a great look. I understand you don't want to get beat and cause an odd man rush and you don't want to be too aggressive. But essentially, the Capitals come in with speed. Puck goes into the end boards. Riley is not really doing much on the play, and it ends up in the back of the net. So, like
waving a stick, pretty much.
Right, and so to me, and Jake McCabe, I think, was victimized a bit on the PK, and that's why his actually the game scores did finally eventually come out from Hockey Stat Cards, one of my favorite follows. They had a bit of a data issue, but I'm not going to show it off here. But I'll just say the guys who had rough nights defensively, McCabe was the one that it was really most evident. Riley not as bad. I think McCabe again was more of the victim for the PK stuff, and maybe that's something Sheldon Keefe has to look at. Maybe a little less Jake McCabe on the PK. This is why you got Edmondson, right? Lyubushkin should also factor into that when he's back as well. But I think the important thing here to realize is Simon Benoit has more of a future right now with the Leafs than TJ Brodie does. And I know that teams, and I actually have a question here, Austin, which is, I know that coaches don't generally think about the future when they're making their lineup decisions at this point of the year and coming into the playoffs. But with Simon Benoit, I think, as an RFA and TJ Brodie likely not coming back, the Leafs kind of owe it to themselves to see what they have in this guy, don't they?
I think when you look at this lineup, similar to what I was talking about a little bit ago, is just you owe it to the guys that aren't playing a lot to give them a look, considering that you're kind of locked into that 3 seed, maybe depending on what happens, you drop down a little bit, but you kind of know what you are. You're a playoff team, so Laugesson's gone at this point, unfortunately, but he was kind of in and out. Simone Benoit is another one where you kind of came in with low expectations based on the team he was coming from. You kind of have to take a grain of salt with the Ducks because they were they were a mess last year. And then, you just look at, guys like Timmins, everything like that. Like, you might as well find out what's there for next year because, the guys you're going to ride going into the playoffs. Brodie's going to be in there. There's no doubt. There's not a controversy of, hey, is he going to sit come game one? No, he's going to be in there, obviously. But when you look at it, like, I'm a big fan of Simone Benoit. He's just meat and potatoes. I think, not the flashiest player, has some trouble clearing the zone sometimes, obviously, but you kind of fall in love with the guy. He said it earlier in the year. He's not going to score a lot of goals, but he's going to lay the body and he's going to work his ass off. So, that's all that matters to me.
The thing tonight, okay, so technically Simone Benoit was replacing Lyubushkin. He was paired with Connor Timmins, playing his first game since obviously he went down with mono back in January. And look, they did a fine job because Timmins played to his strengths, which is moving the puck. He had a really good positive game score in this one, right? And like a lot of people kind of liked his game. Again, a little bit of I always say also look at the opponent they're playing, right? Like, I think you're going to see a different result if they're playing against the Oilers and the Hurricanes than you do against the Washington Capitals. Yes, Capitals are still pushing for the playoffs, but they're not among the elite. So I'm curious to see how Sheldon Keefe approaches Saturday. I guess it all depends on if Lyubushkin's back. I think if Lyubushkin's back, you're replacing him and Timmins as much as I like this. The thing for me is twofold here. I want to see these guys play. I want to see Timmins play. I want to see Benoit play because one injury happens, Simone Benoit is back in. A second injury happens, Connor Timmins is likely back in. A third injury happens, and you're looking at Mark Giordano coming back in, right? Like, the Leafs now have 3 guys sitting that you think that you want to be comfortable that can play. We talked so much about needing to be 7-8 defensemen deep going into the playoffs. And I think this now is a time where you got to see what these guys can do. Now, do I want to see TJ Brodie sit the rest of the year? Definitely not. He still needs to play. He still needs to get his reps in. But I do think they need to test these guys. I want to see Benoit play against the Oilers. I want to you got a back-to-back coming up this weekend. There's no reason why you can't have 2 different sets of deep pairings where Benoit plays one night, Brodie plays another night, Timmins plays one night, and you make a decision on someone that sits the other night. You got to give guys rest to a lot of guys have been playing. Even Jake McCabe at some point, I think, is going to need a game off. I think he's been asked to play a lot and in very tough situations as well. So I think that's something that needs to be thought about going forward when you talk about the TJ Brodie situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I it's just managing stuff, going down the stretch, and guys have been hurt. Lyubushkin's been sick. He got, dinged up the first game he was with the Leafs. Gio's been in and out due to various things, injury the last time. Yeah, it was a pretty nasty spill he took on his head. So hopefully he's getting better. But yeah, you just, the playoffs, it ramps up at that point, and depth is super important. You're not going to make much of an impact at all if you're only rolling 6 guys out there. You look at teams throughout the years that have won the cup. It's never just, your standard roster. It's always guys coming up and filling in roles and having to really be the heroes there and making an impact for themselves. So see what you got. And, hopefully they don't have to make an impact during the playoffs. You'd appreciate it if your guys were able to, stay healthy, but you can't really control it when it happens.
No, you can't. And look, I assume the Leafs will have Thursday off, so we won't know what the lineup could potentially look like until Friday, where you see them back on the ice and at practice. We'll then discuss how this could potentially impact the back-to-back upcoming. We'll do that on the next edition of Locked On Leafs podcast. I do have somebody else lined up to join me. He is a friend of the show. I am not going to give away the name, so that's a little tease and a little preempt. Austin's going to be in New York. It's not me. unless your girlfriend's going to let you ruin your New York vacation to hop on this podcast.
I love you, David, but we're
I know
not gonna
I've
open
met
that.
I've met your girlfriend. I'm more scared than of that potential than you are.
If you want to get into that business with her, that's all you. I'm just gonna, happy wife.
Yeah,
We'll touch base when I get back, and if you ever need me on, you let me know.
beautiful. All right, we'll wrap it up there. I want to thank you all for listening and for supporting the show. Make sure you tell all your friends to go and subscribe to Locked On These podcasts wherever they get their podcasts from. Subscribe to YouTube. If we get to that 5,000 mark, we're trying to get there before the playoffs, and we'll be giving away a Leafs jersey. I know some of you are probably wondering if it's gonna be one of the Leafs jerseys behind me.
One of those?
No, that might be
Right.
saved for when we get to like the 10,000 mark. There are a couple here that might be available if we get to that 10,000 mark. So little thing to think about. Really helps spread the show in that regard. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.